Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and I have a passion for empowering others to take responsibility for their careers. Yes, I've written several books on owning your career and am loving hosting this podcast. This podcast is for you if you're willing to make a shift to the driver's seat in your career. We feature leaders who inspire, empower, and motivate you for consistent career action for results. Please continue to join us every Sunday when a new episode is released. Let's get into this week's show. Hello, it's Simone Morris, host of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. We are in season 11. I can't believe it. I still enjoy recording episodes, and I still enjoy getting to know leaders and having conversations behind the scenes. And I enjoy sharing this knowledge with you because I know that it's helping you with your career. If you just take one thing from each episode, you will have a huge list of things that you can apply to advance in your career. So that gives me a lot of joy. What's Simone working on? Right now, I'm working on a children's book, which I will say more about later. I'm working on it with my daughter. Very passionate about that. And I'm also working on something called the Inclusive Leadership Impact Awards. That is near and dear to my heart because it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I don't know about you, and if you remember the first award that you got in your career, but it's quite memorable. And it recognizes brilliance. It recognizes your hard work. And I want to recognize the change makers who are pushing for more inclusion in the community, in the workplace, in the world. And so I came up with the Inclusive Leadership Impact Awards, and the inaugural program is going live at an event on November 2nd, 2023. It's going to be at the Carriage Barn Arts Center in New Canaan, Connecticut from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. I'm excited because we've gotten nominations completed. The judges are ready to deliberate, and then we will celebrate the winners, as I said, on November 2nd. I would love your support on this event. I mean, talk about it on LinkedIn, share it with your network, attend the event. You can purchase a ticket. The event information is available at ILI, so that's Inclusive Leadership Impact, ILIawards.com. Please take a look at that website, learn more about it, and again, would love your support. I am planning on doing more Real Talk episodes this season. Mostly I have been behind the scenes, but I want you to know that I am planning on doing a Real Talk episode real soon so you can hear just Simone's voice and what's on my mind in terms of advancing and being in the driver's seat in your career. So again, thank you for listening. Let's get ready for today's guest. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I am a bit giddy because one of my favorite people or person, if I'm in Jamaica, Nancy Dadia, is joining the podcast today. And the reason that's so special to me is because Nancy is in the book, The Power of Owning Your Career. She said yes way back when I was writing the book, The Power of Owning Your Career, and her story, her leadership journey is in the book. But I thought with all the changes going on, life happens, I would have Nancy on the podcast to give us an update on what she's up to and certainly touching on the formula for owning your career. Nancy, welcome to the podcast.
Simone, I'm giggling too, because I remember when you started out writing that book, and I was just thrilled to be a part of the book and to see where it's come and to be here today to be able to contribute. I couldn't be happier. So thanks for having me. And I look forward to our chat.
Awesome. So before the podcast started, we had a catch up, and you mentioned the word rewiring, or so tell us about what's happening for you and you're doing some rewiring in your career.
Yeah. So, I hate to date myself, but I'm going to date myself. I've been in the workforce for a very long time, probably longer than most people are old at this point. Uh, so I decided after a more than 35-year corporate career, it was time to relaunch my consulting business and coaching business, which is carries my name, Didia Diversity Consulting Group. And I started that in 2005. And it, I would say its largest earning year was about $250. And that was primarily because I was so busy on the full-time side, not being able to do what I really love to do, which is coaching, advisory, um, on my terms and my time. So I'm thrilled now to be able to be the CEO of my own company and from one entrepreneur to another. I think you know how great that feels and how liberating it is. So that rewiring is that realization of being the chief operating person of everything.
Mm.
Your calendar, your invoicing, your revenue, all of those things, there's no infrastructure except your own to support it. So uh, I knew I prepared for that. I knew it was coming. So seems there's a lot more money going out of my account than coming in at the moment as I invest and get myself up and running. But I'm confident that once things settle down and I get myself established in short order, because I've been pretty active out there. I'm just rewiring my way of being and getting into a new car's driver's seat.
Well, let's go back to what type of car was the old car?
So that's a good one. I think the old car was a bit of a luxury sedan, and uh, took a lot of, was heavy,
Yeah.
was weighted, right?
Yeah.
And it was a gas guzzler. And when I use that analogy, it was an energy consumer. The
Mm,
kind of work that as a chief diversity, I was a chief diversity officer for a large global pharmaceutical firm for more than 17 years. And the past 3 years have just been so incredibly um, powerful, but also emotionally draining. And
mm,
it's ironic because today we're together on this podcast, which is also the anniversary of George Floyd's murder.
mm,
And I remember distinctly this day. I always will. It's one of those days that you'll never forget. And I remember the impact this was having on all of our employees, specifically our Black employees. So uh, I think, being out of a corporate environment is a little less weighty, a little less heavy, but my work continues. Not so much with as bright a spotlight on the diversity side, but a little bit brighter on the coaching
mm,
advisory side. So
mm.
I've kind of moved from a heavy luxury sedan to a little smaller, sportier, snippier model that zips me around, which literally is true, you know.
I love that. I love that so much. And I feel the heaviness, even as a practitioner. I remember this day, and I will say that there are certain things that happen, like Newtown.
Yes.
There, I remember like the exact where I was, and so George Floyd's murder, same thing for me. But as a practitioner, it is such heavy work. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It can take me down a path. So, yeah. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about how you were owning your career in the old car, and then I want to talk about what you're doing today to own your career in the zippier model.
Yeah, the zippier model. So, throughout my career, there were lots of, and it really just spanned over two industries, financial services and pharmaceuticals. But within that, on the first part of my career, I was a business leader, vice president in financial services, and then moved into doing more HR, DEI practitioner work. But along the way, I continued to build and expand my personal advisory board or my board of advisors. And that meant really looking at mentors across different industries at different levels in the organization. And I continue to develop my skill sets, right? So that meant every opportunity I can get to become a better leader, meaning to expand my view that went beyond basic leadership fundamentals, but to go deeper into what really inspires people to do their best work. And so a big part of my career journey has been about enriching and developing myself through the different interactions that I've had. And I never stopped learning, reading, uh, setting up an approach where I just consumed a lot of materials, whether it was from different sources, newspapers, um, Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, Inc., magazine, all of these things to just see not so much what the latest trends were, but to gather different perspectives. And that's where that advisory board came into play. And so the interesting part about my journey is that I had spent so much time focusing on doing that. I never really took the time to celebrate how much I had learned and how much I have to offer and to give back. So at this point in my life, it really is about giving back and not stopping the work, but tooling it in a way where I can be a value add to others that are in the workplace today. And I'm by no means suggesting I have the answers, but there are certainly things that I can relate to help guide people through some of these twists and turns and the climb, because a career is a climb. It's not always a vertical climb. It is like a rock wall climb. But I think at times, especially as a DEI practitioner, it feels like a vertical climb
Mhm.
and a little bit up, kind of that Sisyphus pushing the rock uphill. Um, and you notice that in that mythological story, Sisyphus is alone most of the time. So I think the learning for me in this phase of my career is here I am to coach, to advise, to impart some of my wisdom, right, wrong, or indifferent, but perhaps short circuit the journey for you in some ways about some of the landmines or the unwritten rules. So I feel more energized than ever. I'm the oldest I've ever been, in this uh, career thing, and I was really excited many, many years ago when I got a mailing from AARP, and and now I find out that um, everybody is eligible to be an AARP member. So it lost its zeal to get all these discounts, you know.
So Nancy, right now, knowing what you know from your corporate experience, across different industries, what would you say is your formula for successfully owning your career? What are the key ingredients?
I love mixing different things together. I think the number one ingredient is keeping your network nourished.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is uh, a network isn't about the number of people that you have in it. It's the quality of the people that you engage with and how you exchange value and become an asset to each other. So there's one, I think you've probably heard me say this, Simone. There's one thing that uh, always annoyed me throughout my career. It's when people would say, I want to pick your brain, right?
Mm,
And I always felt that that was just an extraction and a one-way street. And I think the key to a great network is really having a two-way connection. So the whole hour shouldn't, or the time that we spend together shouldn't just be about what you need. It's always important to ask the other person, what can I do for you? And I
mhm,
remember this story one time this person was networking with me uh, who wanted to move into the healthcare industry. And she was an OD person. And we spent, I don't know, about 30, 40 minutes talking about the culture at the company. And at the end of the meeting, she pulled out a package, which was the latest research on inclusion and culture. And she gave it to me. It was well curated and put together. I was blown away. Nobody had ever done that, brought me something that I could use. And it was great research. So to me, I think that's one piece, nourishing your network. And then the last is not just reaching out to people when you need something, but also reaching out just to say, hey, what's going on? What are you working on? Or sometimes just reaching out to say, hey, here's what I'm working on. Do you want to meet for nowadays virtual meets are real easy. So it's those two things, two-way street and
mm. I
nourishing.
love that. I love that. And you also talked about before that personal, that advisory board. So having I call it a success squad in the book, but
There you
having
go.
a team of advisors that you can go to about your career as you make these big decisions. And speaking of big decisions, you did a big jump, right?
Mm.
So, talk to us about risk. What goes through your mind, or what should our listeners keep in mind when thinking about taking risk or betting on themselves in their careers?
Yeah. You know how we've uh, bet on people, in terms of taking a big bet on talent.
Mhm.
And sometimes we lose sight of our own capabilities and our own talent. And I'm not saying that there isn't risk associated. And in doing so, at this point in my life, it was the right decision to make, but I planned for it. I planned for this day, knowing that there wouldn't be a paycheck every 2 weeks, and there would be additional expenses. So when you leave a corporation, and if you don't have um, a situation where healthcare is easily accessible, you have to think about all the expenses that come into play. So I think planning in advance, if this is something that you want to do, but believing in yourself, because what got you here wasn't luck. What got you here was the efforts, the smarts that you all have that you bring to the table, and if you don't believe in yourself first, nobody else is going to believe in what you have to offer. So come to the table with that confidence of who you are and what you bring and take a shot. If you want to just get your toe wet, try it out for a year. Um, the first time I did it, I did it for 2 years and it wasn't the right time. And I went back inside into a corporate role. Now, there's no way I'll go back inside. Um, but I'm at a different point in my life.
Yeah.
I'm at, I've been in the workforce, as I said in the beginning, more than 35 years. So it depends on where you're at. Not to say that you can't be an entrepreneur at an early or mid-stage career. We're seeing a lot of that now. But I
Mhm.
hope that that gives you a sense.
Absolutely. So, as we begin to wrap up, let me ask you, if you were to write a book about your career body of work, what would the title be?
Mm. I've been thinking about what a title could be. Um, and I certainly don't want to write a diversity book. I think it's really more about maybe something. This is not creative, and don't hold me to it, but I just love Amanda Gorman's poem, "The Hill We Climb." Um, and I think it's something along, to borrow her wonderful prose and poetry. Life is a hill, but sometimes at the top of the hill is where you get the best view. And I think the most important thing to remember is that life is a series of twists and turns and hills and valleys and storms and uh, rebirths and gardens and cemeteries. It's all of these things put together. So it could be something like the microcosm of life.
Mm,
I
mm,
don't know.
mm.
Now you got me thinking.
You have me thinking. Well, you've got me thinking this whole episode. Okay, so now I'm thinking about Amanda Gorman and her book being banned in Florida.
I know. That's why I brought her up. You
uh,
know, that's why I brought her up. It's how can you say that something such prose like that is, I'm not even going to use the word that they used because it's so off the mark.
yeah.
But I think the literature that we have, um, and that the prose that she has written and the poetry that she's created is magical.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
Magical.
mm. Well, it does sound like you are on your way, or you have had a quite magical career. Uh, I want to thank you so much for stopping by the podcast. Can you tell our listeners if they'd like to stay connected with you, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate the time. The best way is to find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot on LinkedIn, Nancy J. Dida. You should be able to find me there. And I hope to, and if you do want to link in with me, just mention the podcast so I know that you heard us today. And I look forward to making some new connections. And remember, we have to nurture each other.
That's right. And I feel
Right?
like there's something around Nancy J. I don't know, but the Nancy J show, I don't know. But anyway, there's something
Ah,
about Nancy
there
J.
is. That's another podcast right
Catchy.
there.
Nancy J. I love it. Nancy, thank you for being a guest on this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Simone. And I look forward to speaking soon.
Absolutely.
I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this week's empowering career story on the podcast. If you did, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Wherever you listen to the podcast, be sure that you are subscribing and that you rate and review the podcast. It's so important as we continue to spread the word of career empowerment. In addition, you can head over to the LinkedIn platform and join the Power of Owning Your Career discussion group. There you can have access to the guests who have been on the podcast, as well as others listening to the podcast, as well as myself, where we can continue the conversation. I hope to see you on that platform. You can also email me at pooyc@simonemorris.com if you have a suggestion for guest or a message that you want me to hear personally. Thanks so much, and make it an inspiring, empowering week in your career.